A lot has happened. You know, Jesuits are always busy lying. Uh, they're one of my fans named Sajak. Let me explain to her. She says she watched one of my videos and she wrote this. That explains so much. When I got back from being kidnapped, my laptop was gone. I had it repaired and I looked all over the house for it and then found it in the basement in a grocery bag, like very well hidden way in the back of my basement. I was outraged. She said, Gail, I don't mean to intrude, but could I perhaps maybe have a Skype session with you? I would love to have a conversation with you sometime. If you're too busy, I'll understand. I said, try writing my man at Gail Chord Schuler at gmail.com. So sorry to hear that the Jesuits captured you. That's awful. She said, okay, I'll write to them. Thank you. Yes, it was quite an awful ordeal. They raped me 47 times and tortured me. I'm not sure why, but they kept telling me to confess how I was related to you. I told them I wasn't. I never even met my real dad, and I'm sure my mother would have told me if I was related to you. And they let's see what else she says here. Here's some more stuff she said. I said, you definitely need to contact my men at gailcordschuler at gmail.com. I believe you because what you are saying lines up perfectly with what I know about Jesuits. I'm sure my men will hunt down those Jesuits and have them executed. She said, I will contact them right away, Gail. It would be wonderful if their A-team would help me. I'm so terrified the Jesuits will come back and I don't dare to call the police because I suspect they're in on it. She said, in case anybody's wondering where I was, I'd been captured by the Jesuits for 5 days, asking me all sorts of questions. I told her to make sure to tell my men about it. She said, I will, thank you. I'm so glad to be home again. It was just awful. And then I've been communicating with Jane Agnew, the journalist who works for National Report. I said, you know, a lot of people are claiming outrageous stuff about National Report. Do you have a rebuttal? She said, not really. It's typical Jesuit lies. She says, I deal with it a lot whenever I report on something that the Jesuits don't want going public. I do have a question I asked. Is it true that National Report is a satirical website? She said, I've blown the lid off of several major Jesuit happenings that they always chalk up to being a hoax. Not to my knowledge, it's not. I was hired to report truthful things, though I can't speak for the other authors on there. There are over 20 journalists on the site. Okay, so I just wanted to stick up for Jane a little bit. I believe she's real. She said, if I was ever to find out that I had been unknowingly hired to work for a satire site, I would quit immediately. And she said, considering the Jesuits' ability to sway public opinion using their fake internet, it's already difficult enough to get the truth out as it is. Okay, so this is what Jane says. Take a look at this Burmese python. You know, I didn't even realize that we had a big problem with Burmese pythons in Florida until Brent Skyped me in June and said that this was why they couldn't send ground troops into Florida to deal with Rick Scott at that time, who was under Jesuit brain control because he had a yeast infection in his brain. I believe we got him fixed now. But you know how these Burmese pythons are getting in Florida? Jesuit kids are releasing them. They're getting them as pets and then releasing them out into the wild. These Jesuits, I tell you. And these pythons have actually eaten humans. So some of our soldiers were eaten by them, so they had to cancel the ground troops. Here's a picture of my sister, and if you look at her eyes, she is different from me. I don't believe she's a born-again Christian. If she is, Jesus isn't happy with her. As you can see, she does not. My men tell me she's very controlling and she likes to boss people around. And unfortunately, because she did write a lying statement about me, which she gave to my mother, and I could tell by looking at it that my mother didn't write it, because my mother's English is not that good. So it's obvious somebody wrote it for her. And my men told me it was my sister. She wrote a lying statement about me to try to get me locked up, not because she's concerned about my mental illness, but because she's jealous of me because of all these famous men who want to marry me. Actually, it's kind of ironic because, you know, the Jesuits are claiming I like all the attention, but back in the 1990s, I was very secretive about it because I was trying to protect Brent. I've only gone public in order to defend my men against these horrible Jesuit women that have been raping them and tormenting them. Take a look at this. Now, this is the photo that Jane sent me of a billboard with Zach Knight on it trying to promote the Jesuits. And Jane said she has to look at this every day when she goes to work at her office in downtown. I guess her office is for National Report is in downtown Portland, Oregon. And the ABC legal place right next to that, I looked it up. That place really does exist. So this is a legit picture of Portland, Oregon. And the Jesuits are claiming online that that Jane doesn't even work in Portland, that she's made the whole thing up, and that she just photoshopped this. I'm going to do some flashes of the photo that Jane sent me. And here's, to prove their point, the Jesuits created this picture here. This is obviously a Photoshop. I personally do not believe that what Jane sent me was a Photoshop. This one, the 715 one here, that looks Photoshop. The Jesuits created this to try to make their point that what Jane put up there of Zach Knight was Photoshop. But nah, kind of compare these side by side. Take a look, man. You can tell which one's Photoshopped and which one isn't. Okay, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious. Okay, and as far as Jane, I think she does live in Portland because she reported to me that she said it's terrible. She says the Jesuits practically own Portland, Oregon. She says about 98% of the people in Portland are Jesuits. Here's a picture of I'd say like within the past year of Portland, Oregon. Yeah, these look like Jesuits. I think she's telling the truth. I think she does live there. She said she had to drink their tap water and it made her sick. And she found out from her boyfriend who worked for the police department who brought it into forensic lab. And then they ended up executing her boyfriend because he reported on the police. And the police were Jesuits apparently. So yeah, I think she's telling the truth. I think she does live there. She said she likes her job at National Report because she doesn't have to stay in Portland and she gets to travel all over the country. So she gets to have an unadulterated shower in places where there isn't semen in the tap water. I believe she's telling the truth. I've had a lot of experience dealing with Jesuits. Take a look at this. Here's a Photoshop for you. This is pretty obvious it's Photoshopped. You can see that Brent Spiner was overlaid onto the background, and then Loree McBride was overlaid onto Brent Spiner. Talk about Photoshop. Let's call the kettle black here, Jesuits. You're going to accuse my friend Jane Agnew of Photoshop? But probably it's because that's what you do. The Jesuits have problems getting photos of Brent and Loree together, especially after the 1990s. When he broke his contract with Paramount to appear with her in public lest he lose his job. At that time, Paramount was run by Jesuits that were working with Loree McBride, but he's not under that contract anymore. He got out of it. He proved that she's a murderer and a liar, and a psychopath. So yeah, here's Photoshop for you. Look at that, man. That's Photoshop. Take a look at this one here. There's another Photoshop. This one's so obvious, you'd almost have to be a dunce not to be able to tell. It's obvious this is a Brent overlay on top of Loree McBride. You say, why are they doing this? Well, they can't get pictures of Brent and Loree together, but they've got to post something publicly to make it appear like she's really his wife, so they have to create lying photographs, and that's what they do. Because he doesn't like her, so he doesn't appear with her. Especially recently. Here's another Photoshop. I actually saw a photo of Brent and Loree online where Brent was looking at Loree like he couldn't stand her. This was 1996. And this was right after she tried to rape Franco Nero. All of those photos have disappeared from the internet. I've been looking for them everywhere. I wish I could find them. And he looked at her like she was a viper. Here's the Matthew McConaughey clone. I know Matthew McConaughey. This is the clone, that sort of an arrogant, uppity look. This was taken in July 2014. The clone was apparently celebrating because he thought that the Jesuits would finally kill off the real Matthew McConaughey and he could parade around as the clone and I guess go off with all of Matthew's money and, you know, continue the fake stuff about Camila being Matthew's wife. So she got all three of her babies with Matthew through gun bombs. You know, not gun bombs, bombs on his chest. It seems hard to believe, but these Jesuits are psychopaths. And I made some videos about psychopaths, okay? Yeah, he's celebrating. He's probably not too happy, though, that here's another one taken in July 2014. Obviously the clone. Matthew wouldn't have a big smile like this in July 2014. He was there at Church of Gail suffering with my men having all that penis problem. Listen to my earlier video about that. And then here we end with, this was a photo that Jane sent me from Portland, Oregon, and they were watching a big movie, and I guess they couldn't claim this one was a Photoshop because it's pretty obvious that that's a real television set in the background. So, though I'm sure they're going to try to claim that. I told Jane if she can to try to get me some videos of stuff. The only problem is my men have tried to send me videos of stuff, and Zach Knight is so computer savvy, he's able to sabotage these things. Well, even one of my friends who works for the Gabriel Chana Fox News Channel, even the videos she made was sabotaged. He's a computer genius. You know, you got to remember, Satan invented the computer. So see, these Jesuits do the Photoshop, and hey, Jesuits, you accuse Jane of Photoshop, and that's what you do, huh? Don't be a hypocrite, man. It's obvious. They don't have to Photoshop Matthew McConaughey and Camila Alves because they've got a very cooperative, evil Matthew McConaughey clone. And he takes public pictures with Camila. Of course, he claims he's the real Matthew. And then they claim there's no such thing as clones. Oh, by the way, Brent Spiner told me he never reports on Reddit. No, so anything you read on Reddit, that's not the real Brent Spiner. That's the clone, okay? Brent Spiner tells me he never uses Reddit.
My ears starting to squint.
Anyways, Jesuits do a lot of photoshopping. I just couldn't sit back and let them accuse Jane of photoshopping that Zach Knight billboard in Portland, when that's exactly what they do with their photos of Loree McBride and Brent Spiner. I did find one photo where it's obvious that Matthew McConaughey was photoshopped. If you look at this wedding photo between Matthew and Camila, you'll notice that they're having problems having Matthew look happy around Camila. Whenever the clone is with Camila, he looks very shallow, arrogant, and proud. And because I'm exposing Camila and the Matthew clone, they have to Photoshop any pictures of Matthew with Camila, and what they do is they doctor up her face to make her look nicer. And in this wedding photo, this looks like the real Matthew got overlaid onto the photo. You can see that. So you can see they do have to do a little bit of Photoshop with the Matthew-Camila relationship, especially if they want to make them look like a couple that's capable of having a happy long-term relationship, which is the Jesuit lie. Actually, the relationship has been maintained by bombs to Matthew McConaughey's chest. And this wedding photo, actually, Matthew never married Camila. He was not at the wedding ceremony. That was the clone. But to make it appear that Matthew was there, they grafted a photo of the real Matthew onto this picture, and it's obvious it's grafted in. You can see that.